My own family, the people who were supposed to protect me, kicked me out of my home right before my SATs, all to make room for my sister's wedding guests. And when I asked for help, she told me to go live on the streets. What happened next? Oh, they had no idea what they'd unleashed. Okay, so picture this. I'm 17, right? And I've been grinding for months, pouring everything into preparing for my SATs. It's my future, you know? But my family is something else. They decided, out of the blue, to kick me out of my own room, out of my own house.
Why?
Because my sister, Melissa, was getting married in 2 weeks, and she'd invited all her friends to stay with us. Like, really? They couldn't just get a hotel? Everyone else was staying in hotels. Yeah, it would cost her money, but it was her wedding. And let's be real, our parents were already bankrolling pretty much everything else. A few hotel rooms wouldn't have broken the bank. The worst part? They didn't even tell me in advance. No heads up, no discussion. They just sprang it on me the evening before her friends were supposed to fly in. I had literally 24 hours to vacate my room. My room. I tried to argue. Desperately. I suggested her 7 friends could use the living room, the guest room, anything. But no, that would be impolite. They actually started lecturing me about hospitality. My hospitality. For guests who weren't even mine. Guests I didn't even know were coming until the last minute. And here's the kicker. Melissa and her fiancé, Jack, have their own apartment. I suggested some of the friends could stay there. My parents just shut me down, saying it would add to the stress of the wedding. Stress for who? Not for me being homeless right before my SATs. I tried everything, absolutely everything, to make them see reason. But my parents weren't having it. Melissa had made a promise to her friends, and apparently, that promise was more important than my well-being, my future, anything. I made a huge stink. I had zero intention of going to my aunt's place. My aunt is eccentric. She doesn't believe in the internet, which means no Wi-Fi. How was I supposed to study for my SATs without Wi-Fi? I couldn't use all my data. I tried to explain this to them, but they just shrugged and said, "Take your books with you," as if that was enough. Plus, her house is way out in the suburbs, miles from my test center. I couldn't afford to be late for the SATs, and the commute would be a nightmare. I pleaded with them. I even offered to sleep in the living room myself, anything to stay. They just looked at me like I was being unseemly and told me to get out. They were done arguing. I told them I wouldn't leave, that they couldn't make me. That's when my dad's voice dropped, cold and hard. He said if I didn't leave, they'd throw all my stuff out on the street. And then, the chilling warning, "Don't test us." That was it. I was broken. I couldn't fight anymore. A couple of hours later, I'd given up, packed my bags, tears streaming down my face. My parents, unbelievably, actually sounded happy. They said they were glad I'd made the right choice and was doing something good for the family. Then they told me I needed to call my aunt and ask if she'd be okay with me staying. That's when it hit me. They hadn't even bothered to talk to my aunt. They expected me to do all the groundwork. I snapped. I started screaming. How could they put this all on me? And their response? That it wasn't their responsibility because I was almost an adult and needed to look out for myself. Almost an adult. I was 17. Even if I were 18, they're still my parents. They have responsibilities. I was beyond upset. I marched back to my room and started unpacking. "I'm not going anywhere," I shouted. Then they started yelling. They'd already promised Melissa's friends my room, they said, and they had to be treated well. I tried again. Melissa's friends being comfortable is not more important than my SATs. As my parents, you should be understanding my needs, not constantly prioritizing Melissa. But they just didn't care. In a moment of pure desperation, even though I knew it was probably pointless, I called Melissa. We've never gotten along. She doesn't like me, and the feeling is absolutely mutual. But I thought, just maybe, for this one crucial moment, she'd talk to our parents, she'd help me. Because being kicked out days before the SATs? That was a special kind of hell. I told her about the situation. She put me on speaker. And then, in a voice I'll never forget, she said, "I want you to hear this loud and clear. I promised my friends they'd stay with us, and I'm not going back on that. I don't care if you have to prepare for the SAT or whatever. I want you out of the house. And if you can't find a place to live, you can go live on the streets if you want to. Just get out." My own sister told me to go live on the streets, and my parents, they just stood there, silent. Nothing. That was the most heartless thing she's ever done. And in that moment, seeing my parents' silent complicity, I finally understood. I wasn't just not an important part of this family. I truly didn't think they considered me family at all. That was the absolute last straw. Without another word, I grabbed my bags, walked out the front door, and went to a friend's place. It wasn't ideal, of course. I felt like such a burden, even though her family was incredibly kind and insisted I was welcome for as long as I needed. They understood my impossible situation. It's been 4 days since I left. Yesterday, I finally took the SAT. And thankfully, it actually went pretty well, despite the nightmare I'd been living. When I got back to my friend's house, that's when I finally allowed myself to think. Everything since I'd left had been a blur. I'd been feeling terrible, but I'd shoved it all down, channeled every ounce of energy into focusing on the exam. But now the dam broke. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. It was so incredibly unfair. There was no real reason for me to be kicked out. I could have slept in the living room, even if I didn't give up my room. They just didn't want me around. It was humiliating. The anger festered, bubbling up, until I made a decision. I reached out to Jack, Melissa's fiancé. I didn't want to ruin anything, not really. I just thought he deserved to know the kind of person he was marrying, the kind of family he was marrying into. I honestly had no idea that one message would have such extreme repercussions. There was only a week left until the wedding. This morning, my parents called me. Their voices were frantic. Everyone was in a frenzy. Jack had called off the wedding. And they knew. They knew it was my fault. Apparently, after my message, he confronted Melissa. He asked her what the hell was going on. And she, for once, told him the truth. She admitted she made her parents kick me out so her friends could have my room. Jack, like any reasonable person, was horrified. He couldn't believe they'd do that to me, especially right before my SATs. He knew I'd been studying for months, everyone did. He brought up all the same solutions I had. I could have stayed in the living room, her friends could have stayed with them, or in a hotel. But Melissa just kept making these lame excuses until finally, she admitted the real reason. She just didn't want me in the house, or even at the wedding, because she found me annoying. Annoying! That was the only reason she put me through all that. And my parents were on board with it. That's even worse. Of course, this led to a massive fight. Jack accused her of being heartless, called her one of the most selfish people he'd ever met. He demanded she apologize to me, make it up to me somehow. But Melissa refused. She said she didn't like me and didn't think I deserved it. That just fueled the fire. Eventually, he said he couldn't be with someone like her. He called off the wedding. He hadn't contacted her since that fight, just left the house. Melissa apparently didn't take it seriously at first, thinking he'd come back, but when he didn't, she started to panic. That's when my parents called me, demanding I talk to Jack and fix this.
Me?
Fix their relationship? I told them I wouldn't. What was I supposed to do? Tell him it was all a lie? I told them he'd done the right thing, and it wasn't my responsibility to fix Melissa's mess. Besides, she told me to go live on the streets. Why would I help her now? My family has always treated me badly, but I never had anywhere else to go. My grandparents live out of state, and I'm just not close to anyone else. I also hate asking people for help. Even showing up at my friend's house was incredibly difficult. I never dared to speak up about how badly my parents and Melissa treated me. But after telling Jack and seeing his reaction, that was it. If he, a non-relative, could be a decent person and cut ties, surely my grandparents would. So I told my parents, not only was I not going to talk to Jack, I was going to make sure everyone knew what kind of people they were. I was going to write a post, put it on social media, expose them. That's when their tune changed. Completely. My parents started begging me not to do it. All of a sudden, they were scared. Melissa and Jack hadn't made any formal announcements yet. If I posted, Melissa would definitely blame them for letting me know. They were desperate to keep it quiet. They promised me whatever I wanted if I just didn't post. Honestly, it was pathetic. They were only worried about Melissa being mad at them. But despite that, I decided not to post. I went through the comments on my initial post and realized I just didn't want to get more caught up in the mess. If I spoke about it online, I'd be dragged back in. And I was done with that. I was truly done. So I decided to block my parents and Melissa. I wanted nothing to do with them. Instead, I called my paternal grandparents. Even though we don't see each other often, I've always felt closer to them. It was time to talk to my real family. I told them everything. The recent horrors and all the past incidents where I'd felt like I wasn't important. Melissa always hated me. That was clear, but the go live on the streets comment was just a new level of extreme. And my parents? They always preferred Melissa, their golden child, their darling daughter. But for them to take favoritism to this level? Even I hadn't expected it. I'd always kept silent because I didn't think anyone was close enough to confide in, and I hated asking for help. But Jack's reaction showed me that there were good people out there. So I finally opened up to my grandparents, and they reacted exactly how I'd hoped. They were furious. My grandfather told me they were flying in by the end of the week, and they would make sure I was taken care of. He didn't elaborate on their plans, but he made it clear that what my parents and Melissa had done was unacceptable. My grandmother was in tears, apologizing to me. She felt like she'd failed to raise her son, my father, to be a good man, because a good man wouldn't treat his own daughter like this. That actually cleared up a major concern I had. I was, in fact, my parents' biological daughter. The way they treated me, I honestly thought I might be adopted, that maybe that's why they felt they could push me aside. Now I know I'm not, and I still can't understand why they always hated me. As for Melissa, I've always just chalked it up to her being an insecure brat who needs all eyes on her and couldn't stand the thought of her younger sister getting any attention. She always went out of her way to make me feel small, and my parents always enabled her. I'm sure she's furious that Jack left her over a fight technically caused by me. But right now, everything is a huge mess, and I'm glad I'm out of it. I haven't unblocked Jack, but I still follow him on social media. I'll know if he posts anything. For now, I'm just waiting for my grandparents. My friend and her parents have been absolutely incredible. My friend even seemed a little disappointed when I said I'd be leaving this week. But we'll still see each other at school. For the first time in my life, I felt truly wanted somewhere, and that's a bittersweet feeling. A couple of weeks have passed since my last update, and things have changed for the better. I'm living with my friend now, and I have absolutely zero contact with my parents. After being confronted by my grandparents, they actually signed away their parental rights. My grandparents now have primary custody of me. So I'll finish high school here, and then I'll go live with them. None of my grandparents want anything to do with my parents now, which is great. It serves them right for how they treated me. And college? I don't have to worry about it. I always thought I'd have to take out huge loans or work my way through, but my grandparents have reassured me they'll take care of all my expenses. Honestly, I tried really hard to feel sad that my parents found it so easy to terminate their parental rights. But all I felt was this overwhelming wave of relief. I don't have to deal with my family anymore. There's no sadness, only peace. From what my grandparents told me, the rest of our relatives know what happened and how my parents just gave up their rights. Many have messaged me, not directly referencing the situation, but I know why they're checking in and I appreciate it. Oh, and Melissa and Jack? They officially broke up and called off their wedding. Permanently. Apparently, it wasn't just what I told Jack. Her behavior had become really controlling since they got engaged, and he'd been struggling with it. My revelation was just the final straw. I'm not taking their breakup too seriously, though. They've had an on-again, off-again thing since middle school. If they want to work it out, they will. But that's none of my business now. I'm just so glad I get to live the way I wanna. I don't have to see my parents or Melissa anymore. My best friend and her parents are amazing. I am genuinely happier than I've ever been. All my other friends have noticed the change too. Apparently, I used to be constantly stressed out.
Now,
I can breathe. So, tell me, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to choose yourself over the family you were born into? I really want to know what you think.